We're on getting live.
All right, well, good afternoon. Happy Thursday, right?
Yep. Friday Eve. Friday
Yeah. Thank you. I heard somebody say that.
Thursday.
It's a little bit bigger smile on everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. I fully agree with that.
Yeah.
So
Friday. The day before.
So, well, good afternoon, and yes, we glad to have us back here for our PESPA bargaining group. We are prepared today to get right to it, and I know you all had presented us a proposal last time, and we are have a counter proposal for you that I'll let Dave pass out.
Yeah.
Need any more? I've got a few extra copies here.
Thanks.
So, the front page is really just a summary. It's all of the whereases. I won't go through all of that. At the bottom is now therefore, so I think it's mainly on the second page. I know we have been over our multiple meetings going back and forth with our proposals and our percentages, and I'm going to take a few minutes to kind of talk about that a little bit, because we do have a salary proposal, a salary grid proposal that we'd like to talk about that addresses a few things that I know just the conversations over the last few months have been you know, pointing at. And again, we are looking to provide as big of a raise to all of our employees in this group, really doing whatever it takes to address you know, the financial concerns of the employees. And so number one says employee in the bargaining unit currently earning $15 an hour will receive a pay increase between 2.75 to 4% as indicated on the new salary schedule, Exhibit A. I'm going to talk about number two as well for just a moment. I'm going to read that. All other employees will receive a 4.25% increase as indicated on the new salary schedule, Exhibit A. And as you know, we had originally started at 2.5. We went back and we were closing our books, and we were able to get it to a 3.5. And we have been spending a great amount of time just again doing what was asked of us to look into all avenues that we could provide as much of a raise to our employees as possible. And that is why you see a 4.25% increase for most of the employees in this group. I want to address though and you see it on the grid, those are the shaded boxes. One thing that, you know, we have heard too is once the requirement came down that we were required to increase our hourly rate to $15 for all of our, you know, for any employee, minimum of $15 an hour. It did put a little bit of a, well, no, it didn't put a little bit. It did exasperate the compression issue, especially at our pay grades 5, 6. And so what we wanted to do, and again, remember those employees received, I think, upwards of a 30% raise, 29% raise, 27.29 when it was raised to $15 an hour. But we also, again, like I said, our levels, especially on pay grade 5, that the first 7 levels are all sitting at $15. We felt, and I think this was probably an ask too, we have heard, is to show some sort of separation between them. So that is why you see moving forward, level G would be 2.75 increase, then it goes up by a quarter, like 3%, 3.25, 3.5. So the people at 5L would receive a 4%. Again, it just would separate a little bit of that getting away from everybody sitting at $15 an hour. So actually, I'm probably going to ask Dave if you wouldn't mind just walking through this sheet. I know I could do it, but you could do it really so much better than me. Explaining the 3 grids on there.
Right. So what the proposal is, the top grid is the current from 22, 23. That's where everybody is currently. What we're proposing in the middle is, again, sort of reiterate what Paul said, to have a little bit of separation between the current and the new hires and the people that have been here, especially in level pay grade 5, level G through K or through L. is to kind of go back and add a level F for new hires. So the level F in the middle grid is the current level G where we're starting now. And any new hire that would come in after ratification and board approval would start at that level. Anybody currently in the level G would move down to the new level G. So one other thing we're proposing this year is instead of going up a ladder, because 99% of the people don't really understand the letters anyway, and the letters don't really correlate to like a year of service or anything, is for to kind of help with getting this compression a little bit, is that it stay on the same level, but it would go to whatever appropriate new hourly rate in that middle box. And the bottom box is taking that new hourly rate minus the current hourly rate to figure out what type of percentage increase that they would get. So that's where the majority is 4.25. The highlighted ones are the between 2.75 and 4, or that 8.5.
So I want to give like an example, because as you
So
know,
an
I always like
example.
my example.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe you can walk through it.
So somebody currently, let's say, pay grade,
Just take the 5G.
the 5G is at $15. They would go to 15.4125, which is a 2.75% increase. Pay grade 7H is 15.2036 currently. It would go to 15.6375. Oh, I'm sorry. It would go to 15.8498, which going down is a 4.25% increase.
So what you're talking about is giving the new employee that just all got their $15 an hour last year at just a 2.75 and 3.0, and the rest of the people 4.25. Make it clear. I got it like that.
Basically, yes.
This is like that.
Anywhere between, right, that raise to 15 would be getting anywhere between 2.75 and 4.0.
Right.
Everybody else would be 4.25.
So if somebody just got hired in the G15 in August before ratification, they would get the 2.75 increase.
So
It's
you're talking,
just the other part of it is new hires after everything's board approved are gonna go to that level.
so you're talking later, because I know how this works. So you're talking about H and I, there are the almost 2 or 3 years of service. They're getting a 3 or 3.25. Either have 2 or 3 years
Yeah,
service.
those.
So,
Yes,
yes,
what it
and
is.
I would preface that by saying,
Because
you
years.
can't talk about years of service because we've been dropping the levels. So people who are actually on G and H could have been with us 6 or 7 years,
No.
right? Yes, yeah. Okay, I can show you those people.
Well, I wanted to say, because that's the reason we did the pay scale. It was just the letter, like David said, the letter at the top,
Yes,
and I mean nothing, it means so they know every year where they're moving to a pay salary. So technically, because I'm the one create this pay scale,
well, we all
Wait.
grouped it, yes, yeah.
what the letter F mean the first year, the new employee, or less the first year. Letter H, well, letter G is like a, would you between in a year and a half, pushing to 2 years. It don't mean the years exactly, but that's what is moving to it. So I just want to,
So level, like you were saying, the H and the I would get the 3 or 3.25. Last year, we probably got like a 14-15%.
yeah, depend on the job description. We're talking Billy was assistant and teacher assistant, they would the lower $10 an hour.
Up to the 15.
Yeah. Okay,
Yeah, H and I.
it depends on the job description.
On what pay grade?
A 5.
24.43% last year, and I got a 20%, 20.48%.
Yeah, but it depends on the job description.
Okay, so new,
So
just to clarify, 'cause I'm trying to understand, to compare the second chart, like the middle chart to the last chart. Level F becomes, level F becomes anybody, like new hires
After board approval.
after board approval. So anybody there right now who's potentially a new hire this year, but they're there now, they become,
They currently are G.
Because G is-
G is the current lowest rate.
they're G, but they would be, and they would,
Okay, my thing is,
The column that's G, the 2.75.
why we don't keep the letter, we to keep taking the letter off? And that will make it more understanding. People gonna be confused. If we accept the.
actually, I think adding, like, taking levels from the bottom and adding value to the remaining levels is a good, it's a good strategy to avoid, to mitigate compression. I do agree with Nelly, though, that there's some confusion, as I can see some confusion, because it's a little confusing to me. What becomes, like, it's almost as if we're taking F away, like F, we're adding F and then changing it. I guess I need some more explanation on exactly how that would work. If I were coming in as a new hire this year, now, or a new hire after ratification. So help me understand.
Or new at, correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
I want to clear it in my mind as well. So a new hire coming on after ratification will go to one level F, right?
Mhm.
Anybody who hired prior to this ratification, they would be on level G already. And they would remain on level G and then get those corresponding percentages that you see there.
Okay, I see.
That's correct.
So if you look at the top
Mhm.
grid, they're already on G if they're currently an employee. So they're just remaining on G and G gets a raise. F is being added, whereas we used to drop the letters every year, which just adds to the compression.
Right, correct. Yeah, you have to do both in order to take care of compression. So I agree that this is a good strategy for that.
The new hires after board approval would be on the new G and it's the same as the people that have been here all of
Which
last
is
year.
basic question, right?
Right.
That's the proposal.
So I'm gonna continue on and if maybe we come back.
Okay, yeah, I might need to come back to the level F thing, but okay, sure.
So, one big, conversation I know was mentioned last meeting as well, but I think we have been discussing our child development associates for the last, many months and years. And so we are proposing to reclassify the CDA from a D8 to a D9, which would be equal to a 10% pay increase for that group. We also heard, and I know, Nelly, you had asked last time to do some looking into about the licensures for some of our other assistants and so forth. So number 4 addresses that, beginning with the effective date of this MOU through June 30th. The board will pay the cost of renewal of the following license certification. So we have the certified OT occupational therapist assistant license, $60 every 2 years. We're putting that dollar amount in there because it's what was reported to us. Retired physical therapist assistant license to the Department of Health, $135 every 2 years. Oh, did I say retired?
Yes, you did. But
I
what do you mean?
apologize. That is not, I'm so sorry. Certified nursing assistant, which are CNAs, it's a requirement of $55 every 2 years, and our LPNs, which have a $75 every 2 years. And then number 5, returns to our healthcare of paying 80% increase to the healthcare premiums for all support employees covered by the bargaining unit. So that would mean that employees pick up 20%. I will say, I'm so sorry. I do, so that is our proposal, sorry, I was just looking at my other piece of paper and I didn't have anything, so, that is our proposal. I do know that, we had, talked about some other items and so forth, and, after looking at them, this is, the proposal that we are presenting here. I don't know, Lindsay, if you want to talk more about the grid at all, if you wanted to talk it out, I can, You know,
Thanks.
again, I think for just the good of the group too, I know we mentioned it, but we probably mentioned it a little quickly. You know, we had to look, well, we wanted to look at things a little differently because of that $15. And we hear loud and clear from various groups about, you know, that compression, and then we understand when we raise it to $15 and we have new people coming in, how do we build that separation when we have continued to drop the letter? And we did that for a good reason. I mean, you know, I'm not critiquing that at all, but the reason why we added that F back in there was to just address those people who've been hired who had a year of service already. How do we separate them from somebody new being hired? And so that was one of the ideas there. The other thing is that when we look at that $15 across that D5, we just really felt strongly there needed to be a little bit of separation, or else that group would never get out of the $15, right, range. Or we can't just lay that across that group of $15 because it would then jump over some of the other higher pay grades. So again, there's a lot of things going into the mix here. We felt this was a very creative way to really address that separation a little bit, or making to get to that separation, but also the 4.25%. We felt very strongly we needed to get as much of that raise to every single employee in the grid, be it if you're at a D5G or if you're at a D14U, you know, we wanted to make sure that was addressed throughout.
Yeah, and I agree with y'all that this is a creative way of addressing the compression issue. It really is the only way you do it. The movement has to happen in both the grades and the levels. And so I agree with the strategy. I think our ongoing concern would be, which was the other part of our proposal, and the other concern that we have to address is making sure that all of our employees are at a truly a living wage. And that's so while compression certainly is something important because we want to retain our employees, we have to make sure that we're retaining them at what is for them a living, a living wage here locally. So we would need to look at that. I just want to make sure I understand the way it's being represented, because I don't want to mistake it or make a mistake in the proposal. So currently, those at level G would remain at level G. They would still be in that category G6 or whatever, but they would but their increases would come in the form of adding value to each of those steps. So they would go from, if they're currently at G5 at $15 an hour, they would, their increase would be to $15.41, which it's
2.75.
Yeah, 2.75 at the bottom. And that would be for anyone that is currently in any of these steps or any of these positions. But after ratification by the board, anybody else coming in would be coming in at level F. So we're adding that level. This is the way that it's drawn out here. And that it's a 0% raise represented at the bottom, not because it's 0% to them, but simply because there's no change to it. It's not a 0% increase to, there's like nobody in those exactly. So it's simply that is that initial. Yeah, it's the original year of the step.
Probably could go the zeros. We can take that off. That confuses.
No. It's okay. Listen, I think it's fine. It's I like the consistency of it. I just wanted to make sure I understood who is actually, or there's no one there currently. There would be after ratification. Okay. Okay.
And I think it would be an notification of the board. Sorry. Yeah, just want to make sure that's all.
Okay. And I'm just doing a comparison with the counter or the counter that we brought. It's sort of out of turn, but we brought it last session. Yeah, and the 18th, I think.
Correct.
that the parts that that I don't see a corollary here, so I want to see if what your position is on them. Even though there are additions to this that weren't on our original proposal, so I appreciate that. Our proposal, item 3 of our last proposal spoke to, and this is challenging because it incorporates some of the discussion that takes place in the PCTA table as well. But essentially what it does is extend coverage or sub pay or coverage pay, not just if an ESP is covering for an instructional employee, but if an ESP is covering for the absence of another ESP. That's not addressed here, so I just want to make sure that I'm noting. So you all are declining that item, correct? Number 3 in its totality.
Yes.
I see. And for number 4, do you want to speak to that at all, or as to what? I think because I think we made a good, one of our PE assistants made a pretty clear case as to how she's been impacted by that.
So, yeah, and we did do a little bit, more research on that. That is referencing the before and after care, correct?
No, sorry. No, it's the vacancy one. The one, number 3, it has a corollary in at the PCTA table with freezing the definition of or acknowledging that we define vacancies as absences and
I'm
freezing
sorry,
the
I'm on
number.
the wrong one.
But the way that it extends, it was
Can
our,
you pause for a moment?
Yeah,
I just
sure.
want to make sure that I'm not looking at the same copy that you are.
I think you mentioned 3 longer than 1.
Yeah.
right, well, yeah, because I had discussed 3, sorry.
Yeah, but we're talking
Or
about
is
3
the
first.
child care, or the
Okay.
Yeah, 3 was, I was asking if you wanted to make any comment on your reasoning for not addressing 3.
The reason for not addressing 3 is we always comply with class size. We don't not comply with class size.
Yeah, well, and we talked about that at the PCTA table yesterday, and I think that probably has more, that particular part of the language is that particular part of the language is somewhat more pertinent at that table. We had a big discussion on that yesterday. The part of the language here that bridges between the class size, which really doesn't impact ESPs, to the our ESP unit, is that currently our ESPs earn coverage pay if they are covering for an instructional vacancy or absence. What we were asking to do was to extend that coverage or sub pay to not just if they were covering for an instructional absence or vacancy, but if they were covering for an ESP absence or vacancy. And the reason, and we had our one of our members, Stacy, our PE assistant. She spoke to the fact that she was a PE assistant, but if she was, and if she doesn't have a PE teacher in that vacancy, then she would receive sub pay. But if there were 2 PE assistants assigned and there was an absence or a vacancy, she would not receive any pay for absorbing the students that were otherwise assigned into that other PE assistant. So it was more work, but no additional pay. So I wanted to, that was the case that she made by speaking up at the table, and I just wanted to see if y'all had, if you wanted to address that at all, because it's not addressed in your counter.
So the language as in the PCTA proposal is somewhat ambiguous, and I think I would need examples of what that was.
Well, I think that Stacy did when she spoke at the last. Do you want to look at another one?
And I can say it's a lot, it happened a lot, not only for the PE assistants. If you have 2 teachers and 1 assistant and one of the teachers is absent and they do not call the sub-finder, they divided the student in 2 groups, the teachers and the support. And the teacher get the sub pay, even the class is separated between both. The support staff do not get the sub pay, only the teachers. When the class is being divided between both group. Same to happen with the pre-K units. You can have a, what they call the blended pre-K. You have the ESC teacher, you have the CDA. CDA can be by themselves, if the ESC teachers call a self-funder, and it happen a lot because, I know, sometimes you call the self-funder and the administrator needed somewhere else. They let the CDAs inside the classroom cover the ESC student plus the general ed, but the CDA will not get covered as a self-funder because it's not a teacher. But they take care of that 9 kids with 18 students in one, in one classroom. So it didn't happen a lot. You've been covering classroom and you're not getting compensated. That's why
It happens a lot, or it doesn't happen a lot?
it's happening a lot. Yes.
We'll come back to
That particular part of it, yeah, I understand how the language,
Yeah.
the first half isn't. It's really just setting some parameters. It's the second part of that language that I think that is more relevant to ESPs.
We'll read.
Are you
Um,
looking for language that's just similar to what is in Article, I think, 28 of the PCTA agreement? Because I find the reference to, the class size amendment and vacancies is what you're looking for is something that makes sure that when classes are, I don't know the ratio, but whatever you look at, if a teacher is out, and I know it's happened with PE assistants, that's the only time I've heard of PE assistants. If you're looking for language similar to what's in PCTA, we'll take a look at that, but what we have trouble grappling with is the references to vacancies and 10-day count and class size amendment and non-core, all of that.
So if you're asking about the,
If this were not connected to classes, but was simply, as Lori mentioned, similar to Article 28 of the PCA contract, where somebody's out, the teacher's out, for example. And that causes a ESP to have more students assigned to the every day. Article 28 on the teacher's contract, let's say, well, that teacher will get X number of dollars, 17.
Mhm.
I don't see that really has a correlation to class size necessarily.
It does in the instructional unit. It's less, I think I agree that it's not as clear it's more that it applies in the instructional unit. And that has impact in the ESP unit.
So perhaps this language should really reference class size then, maybe we worded somewhat differently.
If what you're looking conceptually is this issue, and I've heard it come up before with PE assistants. Having all the kids on the field and someone's out and the PE assistant was getting paid for doing more. If that's the concept, then the language we can come up with. Conceptually, we don't disagree.
Okay.
We just disagree with how it's worded and growing in class size and.
Yeah, I don't think it correlates to class size necessarily. I think if it's similar to Article 28 of the PCTA contract, and essentially what you're saying is that, well, you know, a PE assistant normally has 25 kids assigned to them. Teachers out now, they have 50 kids assigned to them, so they should be compensated in some way. That. You know,
Yeah, yes, but I do, and maybe this isn't, and I really do, in my mind, it does connect to the class size amendment issue. I think just by the fact of defining, and again, it's the impact isn't as direct, but I think it's still there. But what we want to make sure is that there's a limit to, there's a definition of vacancies at a prescribed point. And that the dissolving of vacancies or the collapsing of vacancies doesn't erase the responsibility for coverage, and therefore it shouldn't erase the eligibility for compensation. So that's where those two things still exist. Like,
again, as I mentioned, it's not typically when we have collapsing of units, it's a result of us not having enough students to support the number of students we have assigned to particular schools. For example, the 4th grade class came up last night. And your vice president, her name escapes me.
Tracy.
She said that they had, I think, originally 4 4th grade units, and now they have 3. Typically, that's not because there's not enough students to support 4 separate teachers in that. So what we do is we simply collapse that into 3 classes, and 3 classes is still level of class size. So. Yeah,
they could be, but they might not be under class size, and I think that that's where it would trigger, there's a tipping point to it.
If that was the case, then we have those would be class size in some cases.
Yeah, well, yes,
Yes.
yes, if the intention was to comply with class size as it exists, and you made the clear statement at that table, and I know you're making that statement now, that the district's intention is to comply, even though the state has removed any kind of financial penalties for non-compliance.
So our compliance with PESPA, penalty ever, because we intend, first of all, our intent is to comply with the law. The financial penalty always existed and it's been diminished significantly. Not very much of a penalty anymore.
No, there's not.
Statewide, what the financial penalties in some districts that received it was negligible. What they used to have is they used to have a reallocation of that back to districts who complied with class size.
Right.
You always comply with class size. So we really never complied with class size in an attempt to avoid a penalty. We comply with class size because that's what the law is. And so my statement last night and tonight is the fact that we're going to continue to comply with class size because it's the law.
Right, and I can understand that, and certainly I'm not suggesting that your intent would be not to comply, but because that additional safety net there to protect the employees has been removed at the state level, affirming that intent is one thing. But having a policy, putting into language a commitment to that and establishing parameters for what happened if we fall short of it, particularly given the financial constraints the district has stated in the impact of HB1, then that's what I'm referring to. It would only go into effect if there would be a trigger to it. That again, totally understand that is more pertinent at the PCTA table. However, because those numbers and the definition of units and vacancies, if we didn't have a limit to it, it could have the impact at the PESPA table of essentially saying we can collapse a vacancy within the unit, distribute those students without if we didn't continue to recognize that vacancy, then there would be no eligibility for additional compensation for the employee who remained. And so I think that it is a two-part question that possibly we could come off the class size amendment language if it was creating confusion, but the effect of what we're asking for, and I hear you when you say that you philosophically agree with it, is that we want there to be the availability of compensation when an ESP covers for another ESP. But also we want to make sure that there's that's sort of horizontal accountability. We want to make sure that there's vertical accountability with a defined date of what a vacancy constitutes, because those vacancies now can under state law sort of be limitless in their eligibility to be collapsed.
That's right. So, I hear what you're saying. I think what you're saying is, without respect to class size, I'm going to disagree with that.
Yeah.
It affects this unit, but I think they're asking for something very similar to Article 28. So we would have to try and attempt to quantify that in some way, see what the cost of that would be.
Okay,
And,
I got you. So I just wanted to make sure and I appreciate your having that we can have the conversation about it, because it's something that was important and that is important to our people. And I appreciate your acknowledging that we have a similar mind on it, just because it was that particular part of it wasn't addressed in yours, and I just wanted to see where we stood on it. My second question is, well, not my second, I've had lots of questions, sorry. My next question though is our counter proposal 2 sessions back, I think, was regarding the no fee participation for the children of grandchildren, dependents, legal wards of ESP bargaining unit employees and district sponsored or contracted before school, after school, or extended voluntary pre-K programs. What we found out last session at this table, actually, the PESPA table, was that you already do that for the children of employees to participate in wraparound services for voluntary pre-K, pre-K 3 and voluntary pre-K 4.
They're not wraparound service, but the actual pre-K and pre-K 4
Program.
provide the wraparound services. We provide the ability for them to attend voluntary pre-K for 3 and 4 at no charge.
Yeah, I heard you say that last night, and you went right on, and I didn't.
Sorry, so let me make sure I understand then. So voluntary pre-K 4 is a half-day program, right?
So the volunteers, if I can do this.
It's out of my wheelhouse.
I got my people
Okay.
that will correct me, I'm sure. So the 4-year-old, again, remember that goes through the coalition, and I'm not gonna say that word, right? Early Learning Coalition, I'm so sorry, Early Learning Coalition, I'm so sorry. ELC, there you go. Well, see, that's what we do in education.
All I finished.
So that every 4-year-old has a half day. And choices are, you do that through the whole school year, or there's the summer program, right? You can do it right before you pick, right? But one or the other, you can't do both, right? So we pay for the other half of day for that, and for the $65 a week, right? So then we, for the 3-year-olds, we pay full day,
Yeah.
$95 a week. So that's the service. So I think you're talking about before and after school care.
Right, no, actually, what I was referring to was exactly what you're describing.
Okay,
Was
we
that-
don't call it that. We call wraparound, the before and after care, all the way from 6
Okay,
to
yeah.
16.
So the only thing is covered is the 3-year-old, the 4 and 5, the first 4 hours is covered by the state.
Correct. Yeah.
Well, and the last 3 hours, the parents pay for it.
No, what
If
they're
they
saying,
want it.
Which is, that's what I'm saying right now, that children of employees this year started, this year, last year,
Yes, this is.
we,
yeah,
the district that is paying for children of employees, so that was an additional.
yeah, then I understand what you're saying.
So I will, let me kind of speak to this, because we did do some,
need to call this.
so I'm gonna let you talk, sorry, so I'm gonna make
No,
sure.
no, go ahead.
No, you go ahead, what you're asking.
We will.
Just give me a second.
Okay. Okay.
I need to caucus, please.
Okay,
Okay. All right, so, before we caucus, could you finish that statement, what you were saying, and then we'll caucus, okay?
I wanted to let you know, because I believed what you were asking for in here was before, after school care, for children, grandchildren, dependents, legal work. So I wanted to give you some follow-up information that we were able to research and hunt down. So first of all employees, already do get a discounted rate, and I'm talking strictly before and after care now. So that's where I'm going with right now. Where it is 25% off for employees, so they have that already built in. I know that there are also scholarships and so forth that are offered as well. Middle school children, this was new to me because I was elementary, sorry for background. Middle school students are provided free before and after care through the Juvenile Welfare Board. So that is something that is good. And I will say there's a caveat to that. For some reason, Osceola Middle is not included in that. Don't ask me why, I don't know. So the other item was, we had gotten was, there are so, I'll just say, because there was like a whole lot of information. There are so many different programs throughout our county. Our county reaches from Tarpon to South St. Pete. And so JWB provides lots of opportunities for free slots for students and so forth, but it's at certain schools. And so to put it all together, I mean, it's not across the board. So I don't want to say everybody is available or has that available to them. But there are many different entities that that work towards providing and assisting families with before and after care. Again, it's not across the board and it's not at every site and so forth. However, what is at every site is a discounted rate for our employees. When you ask for it to be, one thing we have to do is always, if it's an ask to provide it for free, how are we going to quantify that? Right. And that was one thing we talked about a little bit, I think the last time we met, is how would I quantify that short of putting out a survey, and maybe I said that in the other group, sorry, that, and then you're based on how do you get that information back. So even if you said 13,000 employee, and if everybody had one grandchild, legal guardian about a child, if you're quantifying that at even $70 a week or 60 or 57 based on the sliding or the discount, that could be anywhere up to $7 million for just the PESPA group, right? So when you're asking to quantify $60 a week times 40 weeks, times 2,297 employees. If you're asking for what that might look like for a district cost, that would be it.
So, right, so, and I can understand that, but I guess what I want to make sure, at the last, so, at the, and I think, you know, different things happen at different tables,
Yeah,
but part of the counter proposal for PCTA was continuing to provide what you're already providing, which was the pre-K 3 full day and VPK for
partially.
half day, which, because the first half is paid for. So, is your intention to, but I see that that's not listed here. So are you, I just want to make sure I understand. That was part of your counter at the PCTA table, and the benefit is the same between the two, you know, between the employees in the two units.
Yeah.
So is it your intention to include that in this agreement?
We have no intention of discontinuing what we do.
Okay, but it was written in the other one, so it's not written here.
Well, the other one was rejected, so that's a different one. You rejected what we proposed yesterday. We will continue to do what we have been doing for the children of employees. It's just not written in this agreement.
Okay. Okay. I see. Okay, thank you. Those were the questions I had.
Okay.
Is it all right with caucus? Are
Just
you all
in a
okay
couple
with?
of seconds. I just need to.
Make sure.
Yeah. We're good. I got you.
No, I think those. I think they're wrong now.
Right, thanks y'all for giving us the time to caucus and really comb through your counter. We do have some additional questions that I don't know necessarily answer at the table tonight. I think we acknowledged, and I want to appreciate it, that the structure of your proposal is valid. I think has some really good points. Just like we said, or just like you note here, and we agree on it, that it goes a long way toward addressing compression, which was really like you said, exacerbated last year, totally outside of any of our control, and not necessarily for bad purposes, but it's something that we want to address. So I appreciate that. But it is a difference in the structure from the way that we have been evaluating the proposal. And so, and I note that there is not a total value, either item by item, the total compensation proposal or counter proposal. And so I would ask that, and we've been doing some exchange of documents and databases and stuff. I would ask that you send the spreadsheet that's attached here as Exhibit A, if you could send that to me in spreadsheet form, so I actually can work with some of those numbers. And also, if you could let us know, and you might know this, well, I'm not suggesting that you don't, but you might be able to tell us what the total value is here of your counter. Okay, yeah, that's fine. Thank you. We recognize that, I'm just kind of walking you through some of the points that we need more time to consider. The CDAs are listed here as moving up from a DO8 to a DO9, but they are not listed under number 4, even though they were originally as one of the professionals that has rolling recertification costs. And so, and actually, oh, sorry, go ahead. So we would, and that may be intentionally or may not be, but we think that there are also our original counter that brought up this language really spoke to any of the professionals in the unit that had these rolling recertification costs. And that while this does address them, and I think it's helpful to value those here in writing, there are other job descriptions that we still have questions about their recertification. I think, Scotty, I think you mentioned, do you want to share?
Some of our technology technicians are required to have A+ certifications, network certifications, and other.
So then what I'm going to ask you, because I did follow up with all of the ones you mentioned last time. I would like you to know all job titles that you're asking for.
Are those A+ certifications, is that training or is it
No, A+ certification is an industry standard.
Right,
How many
you have to pay.
So you get that certification and
You take a test.
Right.
It's a one-time test.
For me, it was a one-time test. Today it's renewed every 2 years, I believe.
Get us whatever you're talking about in terms of the cost.
So somebody has.
It's the same cost as what we, the students take the same A+ certification.
Right.
At the schools, it'll be about that.
And so, and I'm actually going to, I'm actually going to have to kick some of this back into your court.
Yes.
Because y'all have much more ready access to who requires certification.
I'll go through.
Okay, because there's an enforcement of it that happens at the district level. So I appreciate y'all coming up with that.
And
And
I will speak to the CDAs.
Okay.
I did that was actually a not intentional.
Oh, okay.
That one.
Okay.
I didn't work focused on, apologize. But
That's okay.
We did not pick this one up. So I do recognize in all the requirements you had shared as well, provided that document, spoke again with Ms. Meckler a few times. So there is that 15-hour literacy requirement that I believe is probably the biggest one, that you're dealing with. I'm sure they've got offers. One of the courses, and again, we're at the mercy of the state allowing us to send trainers, people to get trained so that we can provide it for our own employees. And I know Ms. Meckler is trying to do that. Again, I will say we are at the mercy of the state who is allowing who to be trained. But in flip side, though, I do know you have some other courses that you're able to take part in, have a cost, and that we did cost that out, and it was about $84.50 every 5 years. And again, I just some quick math, so we will include that in the kind of a
Okay,
proposal.
thank you. I appreciate your doing that. I appreciate your, I do think that, yeah, no, that I thank you. And then quick question, and this is really more, and I don't know that this necessarily has an impact, but it came to my attention. With the PESPA bargaining unit, kind of like we acknowledged or we talked about yesterday, we work with sort of the roster within the unit, and the information that we get is the job description, the pay grade and all of that stuff, and what that person's salary is. It also would show if someone was on leave or if someone was part-time. One of the things that we found in going through this information was that there were duplicate entries. And what we thought that probably would lead to is if you had, I can think of I'm thinking of one example in my head of one of our members who is a community liaison, family and community liaison, and also I believe a teacher assistant. So that person's unit is really the combination of two half units.
There's a primary assignment, there might be a secondary assignment, so at the end, there's maybe a P at the end.
Could have been, yeah. I'm not looking at it right now. I'm just saying that's there. Mhm. Yeah, so we and then we thought that probably explained it, and really the averages thing here. I mean, that could potentially impact it, because if you're dividing by the number of people here, it's a little bit more straightforward, and I don't think it has as much of an impact here as it does on at the other table. But there were entries in the unit, and I just want to make sure I understand it, that had 0 hours at a particular job. And it looked as though normally I would think if they're 0 hours at all, they're on leave. But I didn't understand if you had multiple entries and it was like 7.5, 4 hours and 3.5 hours, but then there was another entry for them that was 0. So essentially that person is represented 3 times in the bargaining unit. What is the 0?
They're not, I'd have to ask, I saw the same thing, but yeah, they have
Yeah, we
0
need to
hours,
clean
and
that
it's
up.
not doing one of their jobs, so you have to look at the primary. And
Yeah.
then you're exactly right, you might have somebody, the family liaison, for example, a lot of times they'll pick up a couple of extra hours. So building those hours, and we have some folks that literally only work 1 hour or 3 hours. We had some of those as well.
Yep. You'll
So-
see those. Yeah, we've seen those. And again, that can have an impact on an average if we were looking at it that way. I'm not sure that has a huge impact here, but it really was. I didn't know what to make of somebody who had 0
I would
hours.
refer to those with the primary assignments.
Okay.
So just refer to the primary and look at them as that particular person.
Or if they have set hours per day,
Yeah.
because that is those second jobs that do fall, those titles fall under PESPA that have set hours, that is part of the total annual cost. The 0 ones, we'd have to look, but
Yeah.
could be leaves, but the other, I don't know.
That was my initial thought, that it could be a leave.
Constant pay, that they don't have any set hours per day.
Unless they work the
They
job.
just work like random hours.
Oh, okay.
There could be some of those, but we'd have to look and see what.
Okay. Like a true hourly, like
Only,
They
yeah.
get paid
part-time.
Thousand pays that as they work, we have to key the hours for them.
Okay, that makes
Just
sense.
set up for a job.
No, that makes sense.
That
Yep, that makes sense.
we don't have that.
No, there's not a lot, but there's a lot of like 2s and 3s, but once again, go to the primaries.
Well,
Okay.
2 and 3, I know, but
Yeah.
like.
That makes sense. I can see that being okay. Thank you for explaining that, because I really wasn't sure what to do with that within this unit, and Jamie had brought it to my attention earlier, and I wasn't sure how to handle it, but not handle it. I don't think it has that much of an impact here. It was just trying to understand that part of the data. Okay. Okay, okay, and again, like I said, we appreciate the counter. We'd like to consider it further, with that additional information that if y'all could, provide that for us.
Why we came up with this. You know, we saw your press release, we came up with that out and, we wanted to deal with the compression problem. That's been something that people have been mentioning throughout the year. And then it just got exacerbated last year with $15 an hour. So that's why we put together the rate. The average salary for this group is $17.50, is that right? $17.50. So we tried to get it up by giving a 4.25% increase, except for the people that are lower to address that compression issue. And we've also heard over the years, and we've been thinking about it as well, about the child development associates, how they are teachers of record. So we agreed, and it aligns perfectly with the district's strategic plan and focus on early childhood. That initiative is in our strategic plan. Number one, I think, is the priority one. And so we costed that out. It was $389,040 roughly to move from the DO8 to the DO9, plus the 4.25%. And again, we came up with that after a great deal of discussion, and we've been talking with you, Nellie, for a couple of years about the importance of this. And again, it aligns with our strategic plan. It's expensive, but we think it's well worth it. And we do value all the CBAs. And so that's why we came up with that. And we think this is a very good offer. I hope you'll consider it. And again,
And one thing I will do just to follow up, I just want to clarify, that we can look at, any of, certifications or licensures or whatever, that are our job descriptions. We're looking at the minimum qualifications. We have some things out there that are heard, but we're gonna look at what is required of the position. I did pull up your.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it's preferred or.
It is preferred, so, but I will note that as well, like, so I can respond to that, you know, and so you'll have all the information. that you need, so,
Okay,
Okay,
okay. Thank you. And, yeah, thank you very much. And, oh, sorry. Do we want to go ahead and set another time to meet? I know that we've been going back and forth trying to schedule on the PCTA side. And, we had said that we were,
unfortunately, we're not here tomorrow, so we're
That's
not. To have that, but we can also look at.
okay. And not, I mean, and recognizing it's difficult and everybody's worked long days and long hours and everything else, but we do have availability this weekend too. And I don't know how.
Fortunately, some of us are that outside.
Okay, got it. So we have Monday, we have to close our office on Monday because we're having work done over there and they have to cut power to the whole building. And so we don't have the ability to be here for that because we wouldn't have the day with all the information we need to prepare it. But we'll be available, you know, working from home, but we won't be here locally. But Tuesday, and pretty much any day next
Anytime.
week, we could do. Yep. We have some other meetings and things that we can move around, but we've tried to clear in the afternoons as much as possible. So,
How about I send you some dates in the morning?
Yeah.
How about that?
that's fine.
I
That's
just
fine.
wanna be sure that it's
Yep.
so I
Okay, that'd be great.
That's fine.
That'd be great. Thank you. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.